Elderly man with no family begs not to die alone, but someone unexpected enters the room. Walter Johnson felt tears streaming down his face as he pressed the emergency button once more. Room 304 at Mercy General Hospital in Rochester was plunged into the silence of the early hours, and the 75-year-old man could no longer contain the despair that had been consuming him for days. The nurse, Jessica, came running, already expecting to find some medical emergency. But when she saw the elderly man holding a faded photo against his chest, she understood the call was of a different kind. "Please, don't let me pass alone," whispered Walter, his trembling voice echoing off the white walls of the room. Jessica, a young woman of just 23 who had graduated only a few months prior, felt her heart tighten. She had dealt with many patients, but never with such a desperate plea. Mr. Johnson had been hospitalized for a week with heart problems, and until then she hadn't seen a single visitor. "Mr. Johnson, you are not alone. We are here taking care of you," she tried to console him, checking the monitors that showed his accelerated heartbeat. Walter shook his head slowly, his eyes fixed on the photograph he held. It was an old image, faded by time, showing 3 children smiling in a backyard. "These are my children," he said, showing the photo to Jessica. "I haven't spoken to any of them in 20 years. For 20 years, I pushed them away." The nurse sat in the chair next to the bed, forgetting for a moment about her other patients. There was something in that man's voice that touched her deeply. "What happened, Mr. Johnson?" "A terrible misunderstanding," he replied, closing his eyes. "And now it's too late to fix it." In the hospital corridor, the hurried footsteps of a family echoed on the marble floors. Amanda Wilson carried her 2-year-old son, Ethan, in her arms while running after her 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who had disappeared down the halls. "Emma! Emma, where are you?" shouted Michael, the father, checking every door he passed. The girl had gotten lost when they went to visit her paternal grandfather, Richard Wilson, who was hospitalized on the 5th floor with pneumonia. It was Emma's first time visiting a hospital, and childish curiosity had led her to explore the hallways while her parents talked with the doctors. Emma stopped in front of the door to room 304. She had heard a sad voice, muffled crying. Without hesitating, she pushed the slightly open door and entered. Walter looked up, surprised to see a little girl standing in the doorway. She wore a light yellow dress and held a colorful drawing of a happy family in her hand. "Hi," said Emma, walking to the bed without fear. "Why are you crying?" Jessica stood up quickly, ready to call the child's parents, but Walter gestured for her to wait. "You shouldn't be in here, little one," he said, wiping his tears. "I got lost looking for my grandpa's room," Emma explained, coming closer to the bed. "He's sad just like you." "Your grandfather is here in the hospital?" "Yes, up on the 5th floor. He got sick and my mum said he can get better if he gets lots of love from his family." The girl's words hit Walter like a punch to the stomach. Love from family. Something he had lost so long ago he could barely remember what it was like to have someone who cared about him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma. And you?" "Walter." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Emma." The girl smiled and, without ceremony, climbed onto the chair next to the bed. "Don't you have any family to visit you?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Walter looked again at the photo in his hands. "How do you explain to an 8-year-old that you had destroyed your own family out of pride and misunderstandings?" "I had a family," he said slowly, 3 wonderful children, but I made grave mistakes and pushed them away from me." "And why don't you apologize?" The simplicity of the question left him speechless. Emma continued, "When I fight with my little brother, my mother always says that apologizing is the best thing in the world. She says that pride is what hurts families the most." At that moment, the desperate shouts of Amanda and Michael echoed down the hallway. "Emma! Emma! Where are you?" The girl heard her parents and got up from the chair, but before leaving, she held Walter's hand. "I'll come back to visit you, okay? No one should be alone in the hospital." Before Walter could answer, Amanda burst through the door, her face red with worry and anger. "Emma, you gave me such a fright. You can't just run off like that." Amanda stopped abruptly when her eyes met Walter's. There was something familiar about that face, something that stirred a distant memory, but one she couldn't quite place. The man watched her with the same expression of recognition. Michael arrived right behind, carrying Ethan in his arms. "Sorry to bother you, sir," he said to Walter. "Our daughter is still very curious." "It was no bother at all," replied Walter, still staring intently at Amanda. "In fact, your daughter was very good company." Amanda couldn't take her eyes off the elderly man. There was something about his features, the way he spoke, that stirred her memories. "Emma, let's go," she said, pulling her daughter by the hand. "Grandpa is waiting for us." "But Mom, Mr. Walter is alone. We can't just leave him like this." "Emma, it's none of our business." Michael pulled the girl more firmly. "Daddy, he has no one, and he's very sad." Walter smiled for the first time in days. The girl's insistence touched him deeply. "It's all right, Emma. You're going to visit your grandfather, who must miss you." "I will come back," Emma declared, determined. "I promise." After the family left, Jessica approached the bed again. "That girl is special," she commented. "She is," agreed Walter, carefully putting the photo away in the nightstand drawer. "It had been years since anyone cared about me like that." On the 5th floor, the Wilson family was visiting Richard, Emma's paternal grandfather. The 68-year-old man was a little better, but still weak from pneumonia. "Grandpa, I met a man downstairs who is very sad," Emma said, holding her grandfather's hand. "He has no family to visit him." "What a shame," said Richard. "To be elderly and alone is one of the worst things that can happen to someone." Amanda remained unsettled. Throughout the visit, she couldn't stop thinking about the man in room 304. There was something very familiar about him, but she couldn't remember what. "Michael, did you see the name on the room plaque?" she asked, already in the hospital parking lot. "I think it was Johnson. Why?" Amanda shook her head. The surname meant nothing to her, but the feeling of familiarity persisted. The next day, Emma convinced her parents to arrive earlier at the hospital. "I want to see Mr. Walter before we visit Grandpa," she insisted. "Emma, we can't bother the gentleman every visit," Michael tried to argue. "It's not a bother, Daddy. He was happy yesterday when I talked to him." Reluctantly, the parents agreed to stop by room 304 quickly. When they got there, they found Walter awake, looking out the window. His face lit up upon seeing Emma. "You came back," he said, smiling. "I promised," replied the girl, approaching the bed. "I brought you a drawing." Emma handed him a sheet of paper where she had drawn a man in a hospital bed, but not alone. Around him were several smiling people. "It's you with a family," she explained. "Because nobody should be alone." Walter Johnson's eyes filled with tears. It had been decades since anyone had done something like that for him. "It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen in my life," he said, moved. Amanda Wilson watched the interaction, still with that strange feeling. It was when Walter casually mentioned that he had founded a construction company that she began to make the connections. "Forgive my curiosity," she said, "but what was the name of your company?" "Johnson Construction and Associates," he replied. "I had it for over 30 years, until I lost everything." Amanda's blood ran cold. She knew that name. She knew it very well. Michael noticed the change in his wife's face and moved closer to her. "Amanda, are you all right? We need to go," she said quickly, pulling Emma along. "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, but we need to go upstairs to see my father-in-law." Walter was puzzled by Amanda's sudden change in behavior, but waved to Emma. "Goodbye, Mr. Walter," said the little girl, waving back. "I'll come back tomorrow." In the elevator, Michael confronted his wife. "What was that? You turned pale when he mentioned the company." Amanda took a deep breath before answering. "Johnson Construction and Associates was the company where my father worked for 15 years. He was fired out of the blue, along with 2 other employees. We never understood why. My father was devastated. He never recovered from it." Michael's eyes widened. "You think that gentleman—" "I'm sure of it. Walter Johnson was the one who destroyed my father's life." The visit to Grandpa Richard was tense, Amanda could barely concentrate on the conversation, reliving the painful memories of the injustice her father had suffered. "Amanda, you seem strange," commented Richard. "Did something happen?" "It's complicated, Mr. Richard. I discovered something that shook me up." Emma, sensing the tension among the adults, stayed quiet during the entire visit. But as they were leaving, she asked a question that took everyone by surprise. "Mom, why don't you want me to visit Mr. Walter anymore?" Because sometimes people's pasts cross in complicated ways, sweetie. But that doesn't mean he should be alone, right?" Her daughter's question made Amanda reflect. No matter how much Walter had caused her family pain, seeing him there, alone and sick, stirred a mix of anger and compassion within her. The next morning, against Michael's wishes, Amanda decided to confront Walter. She went up to the third floor alone, leaving the family visiting Richard. When she entered room 304, she found Walter flipping through an album of old photographs. "May I come in?" she asked. "Of course, Mrs. Wilson," he replied, closing the album. "Didn't Emma come today?" "She's with her father, visiting her grandfather, but I came because I need to talk to you." Walter noticed Amanda's serious tone and braced himself for what was coming. "My name is Amanda Thompson Wilson. Wilson is my husband's name, but Thompson was my father's, Robert Thompson." Walter's expression changed immediately. He knew that name. He knew it very well. "Your father. He worked at my company," he said slowly. "He worked for 15 years until he was fired without explanation, along with 2 other colleagues. You remember, don't you?" Walter closed his eyes, the painful memories flooding back. "I remember everything, and I know you have every right to hate me. I didn't come here to hate you, Mr. Johnson. I came to understand. My father never recovered from that dismissal. He believed so much in the company and the work he did. When he was let go, he was devastated. He always wondered what he had done wrong." Tears began to stream down Walter's face. "Your father did nothing wrong. Nothing. He was one of the best employees I ever had." "Then why did you fire him?" Walter Johnson took a deep breath before answering. "Because I was a coward. Because I chose to save my company instead of protecting innocent people." Amanda Wilson sat down in the chair, preparing to hear the explanation her family had waited years for. "In 2003, my company was going through financial difficulties," Walter began. "I had a partner, Frank Miller, who controlled the financial side. One day he came to me with proof that 3 employees were embezzling money: your father, Anthony Parker, and George Davis." "And you believed him?" "I wanted to believe they were lies, but Frank had documents, receipts, everything was very well put together. He said that if I didn't fire the 3 of them immediately, the company would go bankrupt and all the other employees would lose their jobs." Amanda felt the anger growing inside her, but she also noticed Walter's genuine pain. "So you fired them to save the company?" "Yes, and it was the worst decision of my life. Because 2 years later, I found out that Frank had forged all those documents. He had been embezzling money from the company for years and needed scapegoats. And you didn't do anything to fix the mistake." "I tried. I looked for the 3 of them. I wanted to explain everything, pay them compensation, but none of them wanted to listen to me. Your father slammed the door in my face, and he was right. I had destroyed the reputation of honest men out of cowardice." Amanda wiped the tears that had begun to form. "My father never knew he was innocent. I tried to tell him several times. I sent letters, called, showed up at his door, but he refused to listen to me. And when I finally discovered the whole truth about Frank, it was already too late." "What do you mean by too late?" "Frank had completely bankrupted the company. I lost everything, the company, my house, my savings, and worse, I lost my children." "Your children? What do they have to do with this?" Walter opened the photo album again, showing pictures of 3 young adults. "When they found out I had lost everything, that our comfortable life was over, they blamed me. They said I was an incompetent businessman, that I had shamed the family. The argument was terrible. And they abandoned you. I pushed them away. I said horrible things, that they were greedy, that they only cared about money. The truth is that I was ashamed, devastated by having been deceived by Frank and by having harmed innocent men like your father." Amanda was silent for a few minutes, processing everything she had heard. "And you've lived alone ever since?" "For 20 years. I haven't spoken to any of my children since. They don't even know I'm in the hospital. Why don't you try to contact them? Out of pride, Mrs. Wilson, the same damn pride that destroyed my family and harmed yours. Amanda got up from the chair, still processing all the revelations. I need to think about all of this, she said. But there's one thing I can say. My daughter is right. No one should be alone, regardless of past mistakes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. After Amanda left, Walter was alone with his thoughts. For the first time in decades, he had told the complete truth about what happened. The feeling was liberating and painful at the same time. On the 5th floor, Amanda found the family still visiting Richard. She needed to talk to Michael about everything she had discovered. Michael, can I talk to you for a moment? They stepped out into the hallway, leaving Emma playing with her grandfather. Amanda, you've had a strange look on your face since yesterday. What's going on? She told her husband everything. The conversation with Walter, the revelations about her father, the partner who had forged the documents. So you mean that gentleman wasn't really guilty? Asked Michael. He was guilty, yes, but not in the way we thought. He was guilty of cowardice, of not investigating properly before firing innocent men, but he wasn't dishonest. And now? What are you going to do? Amanda looked out the hospital window, watching the city movement below. I don't know. Part of me is still angry about what he did to my father, but another part feels sorry for him. 20 years alone is a long time. And Emma? Emma has a kindness in her heart that sometimes shames me. She wants to keep visiting him, and maybe she's right. When they returned to Grandfather Richard's room, Emma ran to her parents. Can I visit Mr. Walter before we leave? She asked. Amanda looked at Michael, who nodded. Yes, honey, but only for a few minutes. In room 304, Walter was sleeping when Emma entered quietly. She sat in the chair next to the bed and just watched the old gentleman. There was something very sad in his face even while sleeping. When Walter woke up and saw her there, he smiled. Hi, Emma. How long have you been there? Just a little while, she replied. Were you dreaming? I was. Dreaming about my children when they were little, about your age. And where are they now? Far from me. Very far. Emma took Walter's hand with her small hands. You know what my teacher always says, that it's never too late to fix mistakes. She says love always finds a way. Your teacher is very wise. Do you love your children? I love them very much, more than anything in the world. Then they must love you too. Daddy always says a child's love for their father is forever, even when they're fighting. The girl's simple words touched Walter's heart in a way he didn't expect. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was never too late to try. The next day, Amanda returned to the hospital alone. She had spent the whole night thinking about the conversation with Walter and had made a decision. Good morning, Mr. Johnson, she said, entering the room. Mrs. Wilson, I didn't expect to see you again. I came because I need to tell you something. About my father. Walter prepared himself for what might come. My father spent the last years of his life bitter about the injustice he suffered. He always believed he had been dishonest about something, that he had given reasons to be fired. It consumed him from the inside. I'm so sorry. If I could turn back time. No, let me finish. Last night I talked a lot with my husband. We decided that you need to fix this, not for you, but for the other families who were harmed. I don't understand. You said there were 2 other employees fired unfairly, correct? Yes, Anthony Parker and George Davis. They might be alive, and they deserve to know the truth, just as their families deserve it. Walter had never thought about it from that angle. But how? I don't have resources anymore. I don't have a company anymore. But you have the truth. And the truth can still make a difference in these people's lives. Amanda took her cell phone from her purse. I'm going to help you find these families. I'm going to help you fix what can be fixed. Why? After everything I caused your family. Because my daughter is right. No one should be alone regardless of past mistakes. And because in some strange way, Doing this for you is a way to honor my father's memory." Walter's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "How can I thank you?" "By helping me find your children, too. They need to know their father is here, alone and remorseful." During the next few days, Amanda spent hours at the hospital helping Walter locate the people harmed in the past. She used the internet, made phone calls, consulted phone books. George Davis had passed away 5 years earlier, but his widow, Mrs. Margaret, still lived in Rochester. Anthony Parker was alive and living in Chicago with his family. Michael was initially reluctant about his wife's involvement, but ended up helping too. Emma continued visiting Walter every day, always bringing drawings and stories that cheered up the old man. "Mr. Walter," Emma said one day, "have you ever thought about writing a letter to your children? I have thought about it, but I don't know what to say." "Just tell the truth, and tell them you love them. Daddy always says that when you love someone, you have to say it, even if it's hard." Inspired by Emma's childlike wisdom, Walter began to write. First, a letter to each child, explaining everything that had happened, asking for forgiveness for his mistakes and for the way he had pushed them away. Amanda Wilson managed to get the contact information for Walter's 3 children: Christopher, 45, who lived in Denver, Jessica, 42, in Washington, D.C., and Richard, the youngest, 38, in Chicago. "I got the phone numbers and addresses for all 3, she said, handing a piece of paper to Walter. "I don't know if I have the courage to call." "Then let's start with the letters. We'll think about the next step later." Meanwhile, Walter's story began to spread through the hospital. Other patients and staff heard about the old man who was alone and the family that was helping him. Mrs. Ruth, a 70-year-old woman who was hospitalized on the same floor, decided to visit Walter. "I heard you are alone," she said, entering the room with difficulty. "You shouldn't be out of bed, Mrs. Ruth." "Nonsense. A walk does me good. I'm here alone too. My children live far away and can't come." "Then let's keep each other company." Mrs. Ruth became a regular visitor to Walter. They talked about life, about past mistakes, about the loneliness of old age. One day she shared a thought that deeply affected Walter. "You know what the worst part about growing old alone is?" she asked. "It's not the loneliness itself. It's knowing that you could have made different choices." "And are there different choices you made that you regret?" "Many. But mostly I regret not asking for forgiveness when I still had time." "We still have time, Mrs. Ruth." "You do?" "I found out that my oldest son passed away last year, and I didn't even know about it at the time. My pride cost me the chance to say goodbye to him." Mrs. Ruth's story served as motivation for Walter. He couldn't let the same thing happen with his children. That night he asked Jessica, the nurse, to help him make 3 phone calls. The first call was to Christopher in Denver. The phone rang several times before someone answered. "Hello? Christopher? It's Dad." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "How did you get my number?" "A friend helped me." "Son, I'm in the hospital. I'm sick and alone." "And what do you want me to do?" "After 20 years. The coldness in Christopher's voice cut Walter's heart like a blade. "I want to ask for forgiveness. I want to explain what really happened." "There's nothing to explain, Dad. You chose pride over family. Now live with the consequences." And Christopher hung up. The second call was to Jessica, his middle child. The conversation was even more painful. "How dare you call me after all these years?" she shouted over the phone. "You abandoned us. You threw us out of the house as if we were criminals." "Daughter, please, let me explain." "No, I don't want to hear your lies anymore. Don't call here again." The third call to Richard was the most difficult. The phone didn't even get answered. It went straight to voicemail. After the 3 failed attempts, Walter broke down in tears. Jessica, the nurse, tried to console him. "Mr. Johnson, these wounds are very deep. It will take time to heal." "I don't have any more time, Jessica. I feel my heart is weak, that it could stop at any moment." "Don't say that. You're getting better every day." But Walter knew deep in his heart that his days were numbered. The loneliness and regret were weighing more than the medication could handle. The next day, Emma arrived earlier than usual at the hospital. "Mr. Walter, why are you so sad today?" she asked, seeing his red eyes. I tried to talk to my children yesterday, Emma. They don't want to forgive me. And are you going to give up? I don't know what else to do. Emma climbed onto the hospital bed and sat next to Walter. Do you know what happened when I had a big fight with my cousin last year? No. What happened? I said some really ugly things to him, and he got very angry with me. He didn't want to play with me anymore. He didn't even want to see me. And how did you make up? I didn't give up. Every day I sent him a drawing through my aunt. Every day I sent a little message saying I missed him and wanted to be his friend again. And did it work? It took time. It took almost 2 months. But one day he called me crying and said he missed me too. Walter smiled for the first time since the frustrating phone calls. Do you think I should keep trying? Of course, but not just by phone. You have to show them that you've changed, that you are truly sorry. And how do I do that? By doing good things, helping other people, showing that you've learned from your mistakes. Emma's simple wisdom gave a new direction to Walter's thoughts. That same day, he talked to Amanda about an idea that had come to him. What if we did something for the families I hurt? He suggested. What do you have in mind? I want to find the widow of George Davis and Anthony Parker. I want to tell them the truth and make some sort of reparation, even if it's symbolic. Mr. Johnson, you don't have the resources for that. But I have something more valuable, the truth, and I have friends willing to help. Amanda understood that Walter was referring to her and her family. Let's do this together, she said. Let's fix what we can. The first visit was to the house of Mrs. Margaret Davis, George's widow. She lived in a simple house in downtown Rochester, and she received Amanda and Walter with suspicion. You are Walter Johnson, aren't you? She asked as soon as she saw him at the door. Yes, I am, Mrs. Margaret. I came here to... I don't want to hear it. You destroyed my George's life. Because of you, he became depressed. He never got a decent job again. Please, give me a chance to explain. I found out the truth about what happened. Mrs. Margaret hesitated, but ended up letting them in. The conversation lasted more than 2 hours. Walter told her everything about Frank Miller, about the forged documents, about how he had been deceived. He showed the papers that Amanda had helped gather, proving part of the story. So George really was innocent, she asked, with tears in her eyes, completely innocent. He was an honest man who was a victim of the same fraud as I was. My God, he spent the last years of his life feeling guilty, thinking he had let the family down. I am so sorry, Mrs. Margaret. If I could turn back time... You can't. But you can help me with one thing. Anything. My grandson is in college studying engineering. He's having financial difficulties to continue his studies. George always dreamed of seeing a grandson graduate. I will help, said Walter without hesitation. I don't have money, but I'll figure out a way. How? Walter looked at Amanda, who understood immediately. We'll start a fundraiser, she said. We'll get people together to help your George's grandson graduate. The second visit was to Anthony Parker in Chicago. Michael offered to drive there, a trip that revealed even more about the past. Anthony lived in a small apartment on the east side of the capital. When he saw Walter at the door, his reaction was one of shock and anger. What do you want here? To tell the truth, Anthony, the truth about what happened in 2003. I know what happened. You accused me of theft and fired me. I was deceived, Anthony, by Frank Miller. He forged everything. The conversation with Anthony was more difficult than the one with Mrs. Margaret. He was more bitter, more resistant to believing Walter's version. Even if it's true, he said after hearing the whole explanation, it doesn't change what I went through. I was unemployed for 2 years. My youngest daughter had to stop studying to work. My wife got sick from all the stress. I know, and I deeply regret it. Regret doesn't pay the bills, Mr. Johnson. But the truth can bring peace, Amanda interjected, and it can help your family overcome the trauma. Anthony was silent for long minutes. My daughter still has trouble trusting people, he said finally. She saw her father being accused of dishonesty, and it marked her forever. Can I talk to her? Asked Walter. Can I explain that you were always an honest man? She lives here with me. She's been unemployed for months. What field does she work in? Administration, but after what happened to us, she's afraid to work for big companies. Michael, who had been quiet during the entire conversation, spoke up. "The company I work for needs someone in administration. If she wants, I can recommend her." "Why? You don't even know us." "Because sometimes helping a stranger is the best way to honor our own family," replied Michael, looking at Amanda. On the way back to Rochester, Walter was thoughtful. "Amanda, I wanted to do more for these families, but I don't have the means. You've already done the most important thing. You gave them back their dignity. Now they know they did nothing wrong." "But what about Mrs. Margaret's grandson and Anthony's daughter?" "We'll figure it out. Together." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When they arrived at the hospital, Emma was in Walter's room, talking with Mrs. Ruth. "Mr. Walter!" she shouted, running to hug him. "How was the trip?" "It was good, Emma. I managed to apologize to some people I had hurt. See? I told you it would work." Mrs. Ruth approached Walter. "This girl hasn't stopped talking about you all day," she said. "She's sure your children will forgive you too." "I hope she's right." "Mr. Walter," said Emma, "Mrs. Ruth told me that she also wants to apologize to her son, but doesn't know how. Is that true, Mrs. Ruth?" The 70-year-old woman lowered her eyes, ashamed. "My youngest son lives in Phoenix. We had a fight 10 years ago over an inheritance. I said horrible things to him. And why don't you call him? I'm afraid of being rejected like happened to you." Emma jumped off Walter's bed and went to Mrs. Ruth. "You have to try. If you don't try, you'll never know if he forgave you." "Yes, Mrs. Ruth," agreed Walter. "Emma taught me that we should never give up on the people we love." That night, Mrs. Ruth called her son. The conversation was difficult at first, but little by little it became warmer. After 2 hours on the phone, she hung up, smiling. "He's coming to visit me this weekend," she announced, beaming. "He said he missed me too, but didn't know how to reach out." The news cheered up Walter, who decided to try to contact his children once again. But this time he followed Emma's advice. Instead of calling, he wrote letters. There were 3 long, detailed letters where he told everything, about the mistake he had made, about Frank Miller, about the 20 years of loneliness and regret. He also told about Emma, about Amanda and Michael, about Mrs. Ruth, and about how he had learned that it's never too late to fix mistakes. Amanda offered to mail the letters personally. "I'll send them by FedEx Priority to make sure they arrive quickly," she said. While they waited for the replies, life at the hospital continued. Emma visited Walter every day, always with new stories and drawings. The little girl had become a celebrity on the floor, known for her joy and kindness. One day she arrived at the hospital with exciting news. "Mr. Walter, I have a surprise for you." "What is it, Emma?" "I convinced my teacher to bring my whole class to meet you." "Your whole class?" "Yes. 25 children want to meet the man who is teaching about forgiveness and family." Walter was moved by the idea. On the scheduled day, room 304 was too small to hold so many children. They brought drawings, letters, paper, flowers. "Children," said the teacher, Jennifer, "this is Mr. Walter that Emma talks to you about so much." "Hello, Mr. Walter," they all shouted in chorus. A girl named Sarah Jane approached the bed. "Did you really go 20 years without speaking to your children?" "Unfortunately, yes." "Wow. That's so sad. I couldn't go even 1 day without talking to my dad." "And did you learn your lesson?" asked a boy named Jacob. "I did. I learned that pride can destroy entire families." The children asked many questions, and Walter answered them all with patience and affection. At the end of the visit, they sang a song about family and friendship. When they left, Walter had tears of joy in his eyes. "Emma, that was one of the best surprises of my life. I knew you would like it, and you know why? Why? Because you have a good heart, and good hearts attract good things." 1 week after sending the letters, the first reply arrived. It was from Richard, the youngest son. Amanda opened the letter for Walter, who was too nervous to read it himself. "Dad, I received your letter, and I've read it many times. I confess I cried a lot. I cried for the lost years, for the harsh words we exchanged, for the distance that grew between us. I never understood why you pushed us away like that. I always thought you blamed us for losing the company, that you were ashamed of us. Knowing the truth about Frank Miller shocked me. I remember him. I always thought he was your friend. Dad, I really want to see you. I want to talk in person. I want you to meet your daughter-in-law Catherine and your grandchildren William and Lily. They are 8 and 5 years old and always ask about their grandfather. I'm coming to Rochester next weekend. Miss you, Richard. Walter broke down in tears upon hearing the letter. He forgave me? He asked between sobs. It seems so, replied Amanda, also moved. And I have grandchildren, 2 grandchildren. Emma, who was there, jumped for joy. I told you, Mr. Walter. I told you it would work out. The following Saturday, the hospital was filled with anticipation. Everyone knew that Richard was coming to visit his father after 20 years of separation. Walter woke up early, took a bath, and asked Jessica to help him dress nicely. He wanted to look presentable for the reunion with his son. Around 2 in the afternoon, Richard arrived. At 38 years old, he had inherited his father's features, but his eyes carried 2 decades of hurt and longing. He was accompanied by his wife Catherine and their 2 young children. When he entered the room and saw his father, so aged and fragile, Richard couldn't hold back his tears. Hi, Dad. My son. My dear son. They hugged for the first time in 20 years, a long, tight hug full of years of pent-up longing. Dad, these are my children. William and Lily, come meet your grandfather. The children timidly approached the bed. William, the older one, spoke first. Grandpa, why were you away from us for so long? Because Grandpa made some big mistakes, my grandson, but now I'm going to try to make up for all that lost time. Lily, the 5-year-old girl, climbed onto the bed and hugged her grandfather. I love you, Grandpa. Mommy always said that one day we would meet you. The visit lasted the whole day. They talked about everything, about the past, about the misunderstandings, about the 20 lost years. Richard talked about his life, his profession as a teacher, about how he had built a family. Dad, about my brothers, said Richard late in the afternoon. Did they answer the letters? Christopher called me yesterday. He's thinking of coming too. Jessica is more resistant, but I believe she'll end up giving in. And if she doesn't come? One thing at a time, Dad. You've already gotten forgiveness from one child. That's a miracle. It's true. And all because of an 8-year-old girl who taught me about perseverance and love. Who? At that moment, Emma appeared at the door of the room, accompanied by Amanda. Hi, Mr. Walter. Is this your son? Emma, come here. Richard, this is Emma, my friend who taught me that family is built with love. Richard knelt down to be at Emma's eye level. So you're the girl who took care of my father when we weren't here? I just became friends with him. He was very sad and alone. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for not leaving my father alone. The girl smiled and ran to hug them both. That night, after Richard and his family had left, Walter was radiant. Amanda, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for me. There's no need to thank me. Actually, I'm the one who should thank you. Why? For teaching me that forgiveness can heal old wounds. I think my father would be proud to know that his daughter helped the man he once blamed. A week later, a second letter arrived. It was from Christopher. Dad, Richard told me about the visit, about your health, about everything you talked about. He also told me about the people who are taking care of you. I won't lie. I'm still angry. 20 years is a long time. But I miss you too. I will visit you next month. We need to talk. Christopher's. The letter wasn't as warm as Richard's, but it represented an opening. At least he's coming, commented Amanda. It's a start. And Jessica? Asked Emma. Didn't she write? Not yet, little one, but we won't give up on her. During the following weeks, Walter lived a new routine in the hospital. He received regular visits from Richard and his family. Mrs. Ruth had reconciled with her son, and Emma continued to be his daily companion. But what moved him most was seeing how his story had inspired other people in the hospital. Several patients began to reconnect with distant relatives. Mrs. Edith, from room 310, called her sister, whom she hadn't spoken to in 15 years. Mr. Jacob, from room 298, wrote a letter to the son he had thrown out of the house for dating a person of another religion. It seems your story has become an example for everyone here, commented Jessica, the nurse. It's not my story, Jessica. It's the story of all the families who got lost along the way and found a chance to start over. The day of Christopher's visit arrived. Unlike Richard, he came alone and visibly tense. At 45, Christopher was the one who looked most like his father physically, but his face was marked by years of resentment. Dad. Christopher, my son, it's so good to see you. They did not hug. Christopher sat in the chair, keeping his distance. I came here more to close a cycle than for an actual reconciliation, he said, getting straight to the point. I understand. You hurt me very much, Dad. Very much indeed. When we lost everything, when our life fell apart, instead of coming together as a family, you blamed us. I know, son. And I deeply regret it. Regret is easy, Dad. What's hard is living 20 years carrying the rejection of your own father. The conversation was tense for the first hour. Christopher was clearly still hurt, still angry. But gradually, as Walter told his version of events, as he showed the evidence of what had really happened to the company, his eldest son began to open up. So you were really deceived by this, Frank? Completely. And I was a coward for not trusting you all enough to share the problem. We were a family, Dad. We should have faced everything together. I know, and for that, I will carry this guilt for the rest of my life. Christopher was silent for long minutes. Dad, I also need to ask for forgiveness. You? Why? Because after you kicked us out, I said horrible things. I told everyone that you were a terrible father, that you had abandoned us. I tarnished your reputation out of anger. Son, you had every right to be angry, but I didn't have the right to be cruel, and I was. For the first time in the conversation, the two touched. Christopher held his father's hand. How can we fix this, Dad? By starting over, slowly, one day at a time. I have a daughter, Olivia. She's 12. She's always wanted to meet her grandfather. A granddaughter? My God, how much I've missed. There's still time for you to meet her, if you want. I do. Of course I do. Late in the afternoon, as Christopher was saying goodbye, he said, Dad, I'll talk to Jessica. Maybe she's ready to come too. Even if she isn't, son, I'm already so happy. 2 of my 3 children have forgiven me. Don't give up on Jessica. She's the most stubborn of all of us, but she's also the one who loves the most. 2 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday, Jessica showed up at the hospital unannounced. At 42, she was the only daughter and had been the closest to her father before the separation. For that very reason, her hurt was proportionally greater. When she entered room 304, Walter was talking to Emma about a storybook. Dad! Jessica's voice made Walter turn quickly. When he saw her there, standing in the doorway, he couldn't speak. Hi, she said, her eyes already welling up. Emma sensed the tension and got up from the chair. I think you two need to talk alone, said the girl with a wisdom beyond her years. You don't have to leave, Emma, said Jessica. Richard told me about you. I want to get to know you. Are you Mr. Walter's daughter who was still mad at him? I was. I don't know if I still am. Jessica slowly approached the bed. Unlike her brothers, she immediately hugged her father, breaking down in tears. Dad, I missed you so much, she sobbed. So much. My dear daughter. My princess. They held each other for long minutes, crying together for the lost years. Why did you send us away like that, Dad? She asked. Why did you say we were greedy? Because I was destroyed, my girl. I had lost everything. I had harmed innocent people. I was ashamed, angry at myself, and I ended up taking it out on you. We were young, Dad. We needed you more than ever. I know, and I made the biggest mistake of my life. Emma, who had stayed quiet in the corner of the room, approached again. Miss Jessica, can I say something? Of course, dear. Mr. Walter cried every day because of you and your brothers. He showed me pictures of when you were little. He loves you very, very much. Jessica smiled through her tears. Thank you for taking care of my father, Emma. He's the one who took care of me. He taught me about forgiveness, and about not giving up on the people you love. The conversation between Jessica and Walter lasted for hours. She told him about her life, her work as a doctor, her struggle to overcome the trauma of the family separation. "Dad, I became a doctor because of you." "How so?" "When you had that heart problem about 15 years ago, I found out by chance. I was desperate, wanting to help, but I didn't know how to find you. I decided to study medicine so that one day I could take care of you." You knew I was sick." "I heard from a mutual acquaintance. I almost went to the hospital back then, but my pride stopped me. My daughter, you became a doctor because of me. For our family. I always had hope that one day we would find each other again." Walter didn't know what to say. Discovering that his daughter had chosen a profession thinking of him was both moving and painful. "Jessica, could you take a look at my case? The doctors say my heart is weak." "I already spoke with your doctors before coming up here, Dad. I requested the tests, the medications. I will oversee your treatment personally." Emma clapped her hands, excited. "That's wonderful. Now Mr. Walter will have a doctor in the family." That night, after Jessica left, Walter talked with Amanda about the recent events. "Amanda, it feels like a dream. My 3 children have forgiven me. I have grandchildren I didn't even know. It's proof that it's never too late to start over, Mr. Johnson. And it all started with Emma walking into my room that day." "Sometimes angels appear in the form of curious children," Amanda joked. "In the following days, room 304 turned into a family meeting hub. Richard came with his children. Christopher brought his daughter Olivia. Jessica showed up between her shifts. Emma remained a constant presence, now sharing Walter's attention with the real grandchildren. But far from being jealous, she was happy to see the elderly man surrounded by family. "Mr. Walter," she said one day, "now that your family is back, I don't need to come every day anymore." "What do you mean, Emma?" "Now you're not alone anymore. You don't need me anymore." Walter was alarmed at the possibility of losing the girl's friendship. "Emma, you're not just company for when I was alone. You are part of my family now, forever." "Really?" "Really. You are my granddaughter of the heart. And granddaughters of the heart are as important as granddaughters by blood." The girl smiled and hugged Walter. "So I can keep visiting you always?" "Always. And when I leave the hospital, you will see my house. You will have lunch with the family. You are part of us now." A week later, the doctors discharged Walter. His heart condition had stabilized, and with Jessica's oversight, he could continue treatment at home. But there was a problem. Walter no longer had a home of his own. For years, he had lived in a simple boarding house, which barely had room for him. "Dad," said Richard, "you will live with me. Catherine has already prepared a room." "No, son, I don't want to be a bother." "Dad," interrupted Christopher, "you will live with me. I have a big house, with plenty of space." "Dad," said Jessica, "my apartment has 2 bedrooms. You can stay with me." The 3 children began to argue about who would take their father in. A good argument of a reunited family. "What if we thought of a solution that pleases everyone?" suggested Amanda, who had been following the whole discussion. "What solution?" "Mr. Walter could spend some time at each of your houses. A few months with Richard, some with Christopher, some with Jessica. That way everyone could take care of him and make up for lost time." The idea pleased everyone. On the day of the discharge, the entire hospital mobilized to say goodbye to Walter. Patients, staff, family members, everyone wanted to hug the man who had become a symbol of reconciliation and hope. Mrs. Ruth, who had also been discharged, was there with her son who had come from Phoenix. "Walter, you changed my life," she said. "If it weren't for your example, I would have left this world without making peace with my son." Jessica, the nurse, was crying. "Mr. Johnson, I've worked here for years, but I've never seen a story as beautiful as yours." And Emma, of course, was there with a new drawing. It was a large family, with a grandfather, children, grandchildren, and in the center a little girl smiling. "It's our family, Mr. Walter, our big happy family." As they left the hospital, something unexpected happened. Dozens of people were waiting outside. It was Mrs. Margaret Davis with her grandson who was in college. Anthony Parker with his daughter, who had gotten the new job, former employees from the old company who had heard the story, neighbors from the boarding house where Walter lived, parents of Emma's classmates. Everyone wanted to say goodbye to the man who had proven that it's never too late to fix the mistakes of the past. "How did all these people find out?" asked Walter, moved. "Emma told the story at school," explained Amanda. "The teacher told other teachers. The story spread through the city." "Mr. Walter," shouted a woman from the crowd, "you inspired me to call my sister." "Mr. Johnson," said an elderly man, "because of your story, I made peace with my son-in-law." Walter was speechless. He had never imagined that his personal journey could inspire so many other people. Emma took his hand and said, "See, Mr. Walter, when you do good things, it spreads kindness to everyone." 6 months later, Walter was living in Richard's house. His health had improved a lot, mainly because he was no longer alone. He spent his days playing with his grandchildren, helping Catherine in the kitchen, and receiving frequent visits from Christopher and Jessica. And Emma, of course, continued to be a regular presence. She had become the beloved granddaughter of the entire Johnson family. One day, while they were in the backyard watching the children play, Richard reflected, "Dad, sometimes I think that maybe we needed that time apart to truly value family." "Don't say that, son. They were 20 lost years. But they were also 20 years that taught us not to value the wrong things. Today we know that family is the most precious thing we have." Walter agreed, watching William and Lily playing with Emma in the garden. "You know what amazes me most about this whole story?" Richard continued. "What?" "How an 8-year-old girl managed to do what we adults couldn't do for 20 years. Emma is special. She has a pure heart without hurt, without prejudice. She taught us about forgiveness, Dad. And she taught me that it's never too late to start over." At that moment, Emma ran up to them. "Mr. Walter, can I ask a question?" "Of course, dear. Are you happy now?" Walter looked around. He saw his grandchildren playing. He saw his son tending the garden. He saw Catherine preparing lunch in the kitchen. He saw the reunited family he once thought he had lost forever. "I am, Emma. I'm happier than I deserve to be." "Why? What changed?" "I learned that family isn't just about blood. It's also about love. And I learned that forgiveness can heal any wound." "Even very old wounds?" "Especially the old wounds, because the longer they go without care, the more they need love to heal." Emma smiled and hugged Walter. "I love you, Grandpa of my heart." "I love you too, granddaughter of my heart." And as the two hugged in the sunny garden, surrounded by their reunited family, Walter thought about how his life had completely changed, starting from a desperate plea on a lonely night in the hospital. He had asked not to depart alone, and not only did he not depart alone, but he discovered he would never be alone again, because he had found something more valuable than his children's forgiveness. He had found an extended family, made of love, understanding, and second chances. The end of the story. And what about you, dear listener? What did you think of this moving story? Do you believe Walter deserved his children's forgiveness after 20 years apart? And wasn't Emma an incredible girl? Please leave your honest opinion in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, and if you know of any similar stories. Don't forget to like the video, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one.